Hey class, wanted to add this extra video in our lab assignment for week 2, week 3 on project management. This is a short lecture lab video that I'm going to go over project management triangles, some of the constraints that we have, and some of the skills that it takes to become a project manager. And then I will go through your lab assignments for week 2 and week 3. I'm sure you all remember from either one of my classes or Professor Hall's classes, we talk about the project triangle. And I'm talking about it again here in our capstone because it's always so important to remember. I can't tell you how many times I've used this in the field talking with my clients about time, scope, and cost. Scope, or we would refer to that as size as well too. So, you pick two, I pick the other one, right? And that's the same concept here in this lecture about the project management. And we talk about constraints as well too. You can't adjust one without affecting one or both of the other two. If I choose the size and I add more to the project, of course it's going to adjust the cost. Of course it's going to adjust the time. And when we think about this in the commercial world, I just finished up a commercial project, a smaller commercial project, but there was almost $100,000 additional fees or change orders that were added to the project. So these were extras to the original contract, the original scope, the original cost, and the original time of the project. So yes, they added, painting. We only had a $10,000 budget for painting. They actually added $35,000 more work worth of painting and expected us to keep the same timeline. It was some pretty hard conversations with the clients saying, no, you added $35,000 extra of painting. Of course, it's going to adjust the timeline. It's going to adjust the timeline by 30 days. It was painting, the $10,000 we had was actually just painting the interior doors. The $35,000 extra was actually doing the walls and the ceilings. So, it was a hard conversation because they couldn't understand why we couldn't just work at night and work on the weekends. And, it just doesn't work that way. It's not HGTV and we don't work 24/7, right? Our crews are limited to the time that they can work. And, so just one example of, adjusting one of these, the scope of the work. And of course it adjusted the cost as well as the time. So, time is a crucial factor, which is uncontrollable. We cannot control certain things. Certain things are just out of our hands when it comes to time. On the other hand, though, failure to meet our deadlines or our time that we have for projects can have adverse effects pretty much for the organizations. And I'm thinking in the commercial world again, they were pushing me so hard to keep with that same timeline, even though we added on paint, because they wanted to open up the building and start getting it functioning for the final use, because that's when the company was going to start making money, right? They weren't being considerate to the time that it would take to take care of that $35,000 extra of painting, because they were looking at that bottom line timeline to get their building up and functioning for the use that we were trying to do for them. But things happen and they had to adjust their timeline anyways. We were able to decrease the time it took. The painters were willing to come in on Saturdays and get some work done a little bit earlier. So we were able to reduce that 30 days significantly and still, get the building up and running over the timeline that we had originally discussed, but it was very minimal. As far as cost goes, for project management purposes, it's just really, really imperative that the project manager and the organization that they're working for, that you have an estimated cost when undertaking the project. That's why we're going to go through an estimate for this course. That's why you've taken construction estimating before, because as a project manager, it's really imperative that you know that process. You know where the budget is, you know where the allowances are. And, sometimes project managers, we have to allocate additional resources in order to meet deadlines and project costs. So you have to be able to have a pool of subcontractors, vendors, things of this nature when you're working in the commercial world to be able to adjust. But, being a part of the company's estimating process and contract writing process is so critical in your skills as a project manager to be able to successfully get through, different projects and be able to meet the budgeted cost. Even when there's extras, you still need to be, it's imperative for you to be in tune to the estimated costs of those extras related to projects as well. The scope looks at the outcome of the project that it is undertaking. So, it consists of lists of deliverables which need to be addressed by the project team. So looking at the scope of the project. A successful project manager will know how to manage both the scope of the project and any changes to the scope, which does impact the cost and the time. I was the project manager for this commercial project that I'm referring to. And, it was up to me to manage the expectations of the clients and the subcontractors while continuing to keep the scope of the project, in mind, even with the extras. This lecture is in relationship to project management and talking about project constraints, but we do have to think about the quality as well, too. The quality is not part of the project management triangle per se. It's part of when we're first initially looking at that project triangle in the earlier stages of your education here. With us, we talk about that quality, but in the project management, not so much. We have to look at project constraints as well too. But quality has to be and should be a big part of, our triangle when all of these things come together. It is the ultimate objective of every deliverable, is we always want to be thinking about quality. So, the project management triangle represents and implies the quality when we look at all three: time, cost, and scope. Many project managers are under the notation that high quality comes with a higher cost, which is not true. It is true in some instances, but using low quality resources to accomplish project deadlines does not ensure the success of the overall project. So meaning, I don't want to compromise my materials by using lower end products per se, but I also have to be mindful, of my budget and time and scope of the project and everything else, but there's ways of being able to use these lower quality resources and still maintain a quality of finish that your company expects and that your clients expect. So really, this comes down to core values as well too, in my opinion, when we are, using a product. I'm trying to think of a product like laminate floors versus hardwood floors. We can still produce a level of quality visually for our clients installing it that, they're not going to have to call us back on warranty issues later on down the road, or, we're trying to save money. So yeah, we're using a laminate floor, but maybe we can look at different manufacturers out there. ProSource in Springfield, Mass is one place that has some really great laminate floors for contractors. It's higher quality, but we're still getting it at a lower cost than hardwood floors. So, again, just being really aware and conscious about the quality that we're putting out there, even if we have to look at, using maybe a different type of finish material. Overcoming challenges to project constraints is something that we're going to deal with every single day as a project manager. So, being able to have multiple methods to overcome these obstacles, looking at different manufacturers, going to ProSource, sometimes even going to, the box stores. I hate to say it. I don't like supporting the box stores as much as the smaller vendors that we can use. But, it's okay, so having those multiple methods, to be able to overcome material costs and constraints and stuff. It's an ever evolving, the last one says PM role 2 is evolving around responsibility. Yeah, we do. A PM needs to supervise and control the project from the beginning to the closure. And that means all three of those constraints that we were talking about: cost, with looking at cost, staying within budget, not trying to add too many extras to the client, looking for materials and going to different manufacturers sometimes, going to different vendors sometimes to be able to do that. Working with our clients to understand all these things, and working with our subcontractors and carpenters to be able to understand all of these different things too. You have to be able to maneuver around and control the project in all aspects of it. How do you deal with it? Strike a balance between the three constraints, right? And just be able to have some tools in your tool belt to be able to find this balance between these different constraints that face us every day on every single project as a project manager. So let's just talk briefly about our role and some of the skills needed to be a good project manager. So one thing, the project manager or the PM, you're going to see PM everywhere. The PM needs to define the project and split the tasks amongst its team members. The PM also needs to obtain key resources and build teamwork. Sometimes when I was working with this commercial project, the team, the carpenters, were kind of complaining, so to say, about the products that we were using, the laminate floors. And you really have to kind of build them up and talk about, that we're going to do the best we can with the product we have. This is the budget that we have. This is the product that I could fit within our budget. So what best can we do to make this the way, that we want to in our residential? These different team members that I was working with are more focused on residential, finished, higher end finish work. So it was hard for them to be able to adjust their core values, right? They're taking their core values and they're working with materials that maybe they're not so familiar with. So just being able to work with people, just being able to build that teamwork, bringing cookies to the painters that were coming in on Saturday to work for me. It does build better teamwork when you're doing things a little bit above and beyond for the folks that are working with you and helping you meet these constraints that we have as project managers. The project manager needs to set the objectives required for the project and work towards meeting these objectives every single day. At every point of every part of the project do we do this. The most important activity of PM is to keep stakeholders informed on the progress of the project. During this commercial project, I was meeting with the stakeholders every single week. Sometimes I felt like I could never get back that hour or two of that meeting back in my life again because maybe I didn't feel like it was the most useful time, but the stakeholders needed that, and the stakeholders loved that I was able to meet with them every single week. The PM needs to assess and carefully monitor risks of the project as well. These are just some bullet point skills required for a good project manager and for my students to be able to work towards and work on. It takes a long time to be able to get these skills and to feel really comfortable about these skills. They don't, we're not born with them. We learn them by education and experience. Leadership, managing people, negotiation on cost, time management, huge skill to be able to have. That is a learned skill, time management. Effective communication is all about communication, planning, controlling, conflict resolution, and problem solving. All of these skills are required to be a really good project manager.